welcome to this week's video. Today's basic topic is knees, and today the video is going to be a little bit different because it's not just moves that I want to talk about. I want to talk about some safety stuff because your knees are super important for everything that you're going to do. If you grew up doing any sport at all, you'll know how important it is to take care of your knees. So if you didn't and you're just starting to get into pole dancing for other reasons, not fitness, you may not understand fully how important your knees can be. So I want to start by saying that I recently bought knee pads and they're fairly expensive in comparison to other sports pads. The main thing with pole knee pads that makes them unique is that the back has this space so you can still use the grip on the pole. I also want to specify that knee pads are not necessary per se. But if you're doing a lot of practicing, especially routines that have you landing on your knees in any capacity, or if you're going to be sliding around and you don't want a sweaty knee blocking you, then it's super important to at least practice with knee pads. And if you do the actual performance without knee pads, that's up to you. But it is sometimes like laying a yoga mat down. It's for your level of comfort. If you feel safe not using them, or you feel safe using them, it's totally up to you. The main thing to keep in mind if you're using them or if you're not using them is that you have to take care of your knees before and after doing your workout or doing your routine. All right, so first I'm gonna talk about the safety, then we'll get into the moves that you can do on your knees. Sounds super bad, but you know what I mean. So first up, you want to stretch out your knees during your warm-up and as well as after the routine to make sure that everything's sitting right. And if you have knee problems, there are always alterations you can do in your warm-up. So instead of jumping, you can do squatting instead to make it a little easier on your knees. So you definitely want to warm up, and you also want to make sure that you stretch your knees out. So making sure that you have carefully moved your knees through your mobility range and not pushing them too hard. While you are not working out, you want to make sure that you are going easy on your knees, especially if you are working through a knee intensive routine. One thing you want to keep in mind is hot and cold compresses to put on your knees. Most people say heat all the time, but if you've noticed any swelling at all, you might want to do cold instead. Another thing you want to make sure of when you are not doing a routine is when you're sleeping. If you sleep on your side, try to put a pillow under your knees. If you sleep on your back, put a pillow under your ankle. Both of those will help keep your alignment so your hips and your knees don't feel weird. Said this, but you also want to make sure that you are resting appropriately in between. If you are doing a routine that has a lot of kips or other things that can be stressful on your knees, you want to make sure that you are resting them as much as you can outside of that routine. Especially if you do just like a one-time class that ended up working your knees more than you were expecting, you definitely want to make sure that you're resting. As well, one of the biggest things you can do for your body in terms of safety when you're an aerialist is finding an appropriate massage therapist or physiotherapist who understands your specific requirements, because a lot of them don't necessarily understand the life of a performer. So they'll tell you to stop doing the movements that caused it, which means putting sometimes your whole career on hold, which you're not going to do for a little bit of knee pain, right? So you want to make sure that you find a professional who's been recommended to you from other aerialists, because that's the person that's going to be able to show you how to make appropriate accommodations as opposed to just telling you to stop doing the thing you love and are passionate about. Now, as I said before, I just bought my first pair of knee pads, and I want to specify that the moves I'm going to show you, you can do without them. But again, you want to keep the resting in mind and be mindful of bruising and any type of pain. And if you have issues with your knees, you definitely want to make sure that you use knee pads, because you don't want to aggravate an issue that you know you already have. So even if you don't necessarily need them, it's better to be proactive and use them if you know you potentially have a problem with your knees. So that said, let's talk about knee pads a little bit. The back will generally have 2 straps of fabric. They'll either be just fabric or the whole fabric part will be sticky. You can get some like that, so for extra grip on the pole. This section that goes on your kneecap will always be soft, so you have more sliding ability on your knees without getting stuck, which can cause some issues with your hips as well. So they come in a variety of sizes. So you want the larger end up on your thigh, or else it'll start to slip weird. So the main issue is that they can be kind of expensive, especially if you don't live in the US or the UK where most pole gear is manufactured. I personally hate how expensive mine were, and I'm pretty sure I'm not alone in that. It does make sense that in comparison to other sport knee pads, there's far less materials involved in pole knee pads, and they are at least $10 more expensive than like heavy duty like street sport activity knee pads. Or if you're handy, you could try looking into making your own. It is mostly just fabric foam and then the back straps. I'm sure it would be less expensive. The prices with shipping can be a little bit rough, especially if you're not in the US or the UK. So just prepare yourself for that if you haven't bought any knee pads yet. Or you can just be extra vigilant with your knee health. Make sure that you care for your knees when you are not working out, and be super mindful of issues and bruising, and just go without knee pads until you need them. I didn't buy them until this video. In general, they look a little odd during performances if they're not like hidden under a pair of boots. So I didn't see the need to, because I'm generally okay with monitoring my knees, and my hips give me more issues than my knees anyway. And there aren't really hip pads you can use for poles. So let's get into the moves that you can do. The first movement that we're going to look at is just learning how to slide with your knee pads. So all this is trusting that your knees will take you and letting your knees slide out to the side, akin to second position, and then back up again. This can also look really good when combined with a body wave. So you roll yourself along that pole and then bring those hips and knees down. Next thing to do with sliding is sliding your foot back while your knee stays in the same position. So you can do this with both knees sliding or the single knee like I just showed. And this is an example of both knees sliding around like that. These types of knee spins can also transition well to doing some leg waves like I showed in my previous video. So this is kind of a flirtier move, so to press down and then you can use your knees to get back up, or to bring your feet together and down and then swish them back up. So you can also use your knees in any flirty, slutty style like this that you want. So being able to have your knee half bent and then, using your knees to do moves like that. Speaking of, your knees are important when you're making shapes, especially on the ground, so having them involved whenever you're making a shape and keeping those leg waves in mind. Your knees are super important for any line that you're going to do, and you want to make sure that when they are straight, and when they are bent, they are bent. So you can use a lot of on one knee, straight other leg, and you can always take a minute and make cool shapes with bent knees and be on them as a breather moment during your routine. So one of my favorite slutty knee things you can do is a simple crawl. So I'm moving my hands out of the way to really show you what I mean by this. From the back, it looks like this. You bring your knee up to hit your other knee while your hips go up, and then you bring your hips all the way down. Moving those hips down is super important, because if you don't, you lose a lot of the drama and it doesn't look as precise or as confident. So the primary knee activity when you're standing is making an interesting shape. So I like just bending that knee up and straightening it back out after or before I switch directions whilst walking. Other cool moves that you can involve your knees in are fan kick spins. So that was the straight leg variation, and you can do it with your top leg bent. You can do it with your bottom leg bent. It looks more like a karate move, so that's for like cooler routines, or you could do it with both knees bent. If you want to get down to the floor, this is an easy way to do it. Hands in a split grip, legs forward, and then you just land on your knees. So your knees are also super important for transitions, so I like to press just above the knees to come up if I am not near the pole when I need to be standing, and you can also do this in reverse. So going down, stopping briefly at the knees, and then flipping down. So what this looks like is when you briefly pause at your knees, this is a balance checkpoint to make sure that you feel stable, and then you are able to do the full movement. Another transitional move is having your hands in a split grip or whatever grip is comfy, and then bringing your legs down the pole. Transition move back up is from the knees. You can bring those legs out, press your toes in, and come up. So other fun kind of transitional moves you can do. You can get a lot deeper into this if you look into Russian style, but bringing your knees around is something that can look really good, just making sure that you keep those ankle lines in mind. So this also utilizes that internal-external rotation, so sliding your knees from side to side involves twisting those hips on a diagonal, and then you can bring that knee up as you go. So other things you can do with your knees is step back onto them. So this one's really cute. So you step out, spin, and then step out again. You can also land with your knees apart in second like I did first in this video, but it's fairly simple. You turn in and then you just step out again. It can be a little trickier in higher heels, which is why I'm slowing it down through the pole. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is kips. You can do these in a variety of positions from the ground or up on the pole, whatever you want. The main thing to remember is you move through your toes. You do not land straight onto your knees. So slowed down, it looks like this. Please do not slow it down. It looks terrible. As we know, I'm not great at shoulder mount, but from the ground and shoulder mount are the same mechanisms. So you can kip from an inverted position and an Aisha. Those two use the same mechanism as well. You bring the hips up and then swing those legs under you. So if all of those are a little bit tricky, you can start by just doing simple things like this. This style of kip is all over Russian style, so it's basically just moving yourself away from the pole and swinging your legs under you. So hips away, legs under. Here's a little demo of how I integrate kips into a routine. I forgot to film the kip part. I realized after I did the section on kips, I didn't film it. So I had to do it twice, so I'm a little bit tired. If you couldn't tell, I demonstrated for me that if you're doing a lot of repetition, knee pads really help. If I had to do that a bunch of times on bare knees, I would have really hurt myself. Even though I like to think that I'm doing things correctly and I'm starting with my toes, not necessarily my knees, but I hope you guys got something informative out of this video. It was fun to make. I like doing slutty knee things, I guess. And if you did, please like and subscribe. It would really help assist out, especially because this is my 9th video and I have 8 followers. And I would like more followers than I have videos. I think that would be sick. So really, that's all I had. And as for knee pad care, make sure if you're a sweaty person, they dry out a little bit before you use them again. And if you have ones that are just fabric, they should be able to go into the wash. Just don't throw them in the dryer, especially ones that have mixed fabrics, because some of the fabric might dry tighter and some of the fabric may not, so it'll start to feel weird on your legs. So that's what I had. And for next week, if you guys have any comments, suggestions of things you want me to go over, that would be super helpful. So what I wanted to do for next week, if you guys want to leave me a comment what you think about it, I'm going to be doing a video on the history of pole dancing and all of the influences, and talking about each of the theories and each of the people who were integral in creating the style of pole dancing that we have today. So if you guys have any thoughts or you really don't want me to do that, please let me know down below. So that's coming up next Tuesday, unless of course somebody has a huge issue with me doing that, but hopefully not. There's a weird amount of misinformation on the origins of pole dancing for being as young as it is, so I want to talk about that. And I'm going to, because it's my channel and I can do what I want. Or if not, if somebody has a great idea for next week, I can do that instead. So either way, I will see you Tuesday.